lyrics, they can go from one extreme to the other, can't they?
Yeah.
Because we can allow our imaginations to either take us on a journey that's good, or we can let it take us on a journey that's not so good. Because we know we can all get a little cray-cray sometimes, right? But we can use our imagination to bring forth the good things, or we can use our imagination to bring forth the not so good things. And that is the power hidden within imagination. So whatever we are thinking is what we're going to manifest in our lives and in ourselves too. So we have to think about that. But from Dynamics from Living, Fillmore says this. Every form, I've got another glare today. Every form and shape originated in the imagination. It is through the imagination that the formless takes form. Humankind is continually making and sending forth into his mind, his body, and the world about him, living thought forms embodied and endued with his whole character. So the key word here is character, believe it or not, because whatever we have created within ourselves, whatever we are bringing forth as Francie or Becky or Nicola or whoever, that is where we are coming from, and that's how we are going to be expressing imagination. And if what we have created for ourselves is not aligned with God, then we allow ourselves to become that expression of imagination, and we distort the real imagination, believe it or not. He continues with this. In the realm of the real, which is God mind, the imaging power of the mind is innocent of error images. It is open and receptive to the beauty and perfection of being. God never will or never can have error thinking, because God is all good, brings forth all good. None of what we have created on this earth that is bad or evil or any of those things is in the idea of God mind. And so if we want to bring forth that same idea for ourselves and bring forth those divine ideas through the power of imagination, then we have to be aligned with that, correct? Yeah, we have to. And this is what God thinks of us. God thinks of us as beauty and perfection of a being that he created. And that's what we have to remind ourselves of. It's important. Goes on with this faculty, which Fillmore calls the powers, all the 12 powers. I point to the banners on the wall. But all the 12 powers, faculties. They're things that happen within us. This faculty makes everything great when the soul is lifted up with spiritual enthusiasm. Exercised without the spiritual Christ understanding, it is personal innocence, anxious to believe something is true. Now, we know how this is, and especially nowadays, I've experienced it a lot with the boys. You know, they see something on YouTube or they see something on TV, and they think it's real. You know, oh yeah, I can get me this jetpack and fly. The other day they wanted me to look up and see if I could order them a Pokemon ball that they throw down and the hologram comes up. You know, so I said, well, let's look up holograms and let's just see what it takes to have a hologram, you know. So you have to like back up with them and say, hey, some of this stuff isn't real, but in their minds, they're thinking it's real. And how many people are walking around with that idea about everything that happens? I mean, something happens and they think, oh, that's real. Or you read it on the internet, oh, that's real. But maybe it's not. You know, maybe it's not. Maybe it's something we created and somebody's imagination went awry and it's trying to convince us all that that's the way it's supposed to be. And if we come back to square one, if we come back to the place where God is, which is within us, we will be able to determine whether this is the imagination running wild or imagination used in the proper way. So it goes on with, imagination is not in itself error, because imagination is from God. It is not error, but may be used in erroneous ways. That's what I'm saying. We can take the power of imagination and create wonderful things. We all have experienced it. From the pews you're sitting on is a wonderful thing that somebody used imagination to create. Planting flowers, that's another beautiful thing. But we can also use the power of imagination in the wrong way. And we know this when we've experienced this. And that's where we have to start changing our thoughts and know that those untrue thoughts are not going to control who we are. And they do try to creep in all the time, don't they? You know, those doubts and worries and stress and fears and all of that, that's erroneous thinking. And it's a human kind thinking. It's not a divine, those are not divine thoughts. Those are not the thoughts that we really truly want to live by. So we have to be the ones to determine, am I using my imagination in the correct way, or am I letting it run wild? And it's important for us to do that. And some of these thoughts that happen to us are what I just said: lack and limitation, guilt and shame, doubt, worry and fear are all thoughts that try to convince us that they are real, but they are not real. And anytime we have one of those thoughts, we have to tell ourselves, hey, this is not real. This is not who I am as a child of God. This is not a pure, perfect being expression of what God has given me. This is me running wild again with my thoughts. And, you know, we've all done this where we've assumed the worst, right? We hear something, then we'll go, oh, I knew that person was going to end up like that. I knew this was going to happen. Or, you know, you hear something happening down the street and you'll say, well, I've been watching them for a while, and sure enough, just come true what I was thinking. Well, of course it's going to come true what you're thinking. You've created it, believe it or not, because you've built this whole story around the worst thing that could happen. So what would happen if we never went to the worst thing? If we always upheld the best for each and every person, what would happen? It'd be a whole different experience, wouldn't it? I mean, we would be experiencing that too, within ourselves. And if there's somebody picking on you, or you feel like that every time you see them, they try to gnaw a little bit off of you, or whatever, start using that power of imagination and see them in a different light. See them as that expression of God. See them as seeing the potential that you're experiencing, because that will change everything. And it changes from within you. You might not actually see a physical change in that person, but they'll surprise you at some point if you have changed your thoughts, because you're no longer thinking the worst. You are now trying to think the best for them and lift them up in consciousnness to that best. That's a big leap for a lot of people, but we can do it. It's possible. But if we click the button. If we sit there and imagine the worst is what we will manifest in our lives. Then this is what happens when we have that distorted thinking. The next good thing that happens, we won't be able to accept, believe it or not. We won't even believe that it's happening. How could this be happening? How could this be happening? Because you know that nothing good ever happens to me. Anybody ever say that? I know you have at one point in your life, because we already feel we don't deserve it, or we have negated the good so much we don't believe it. Somebody could say, I've seen this with people in healing. You know, they've been asking for prayer for healing. They want to be healed. And they go to the doctor, and the doctor says, well, you're healed. And they leave there and say, I got to get me a new doctor, because that doctor doesn't know what's going on with me. I mean, they've been wanting to be healed, but then they won't believe that they are healed. I mean, this is what we do with our imagination. We let it just run amok, and then can't accept the good. And you know, one of the things about Warren's brilliant idea about the tithing to each and every one of you, I think, is that the idea of giving and receiving, because we do, as human beings, we struggle to receive. And my gosh, think about that. Because think of all the gifts that God wants to give us. And if we can't receive a simple $10 bill, or we can't receive a compliment, or we can't receive somebody saying, I love you, then how are we going to receive all the good that God has in store for us?
That's right.
You know, we have to, thank you. We have to change that. We have to think differently. So, you know, and one of those things too is that what happens with us when we get in that frame of mind, I say, and we're not accepting the good, we have negated it so much, We have built ourselves a cesspool that we're just wallowing around in, and seems like we can't climb out. Now, I've seen other people do that. Some of my own kids, have done that. They get themselves buried in something that isn't healthy for them, and they act like they can't get out. Well, no matter what I do, or Reverend Morton does, or anybody else does, they're not going to get out. But if they wanted to get out, they sure could be, jump out of that pool and say, no, that's not what I want in my life, and I can change it. It takes the person, though, to be able to do it. And it's not anything hard. It's actually harder to live in the cesspool than it is to not live in the cesspool, believe it or not. I know we've all experienced that. I mean, I just don't even want to think about how much energy people waste living down in that they could be doing so much good. All right, the Revealing Word says this about imagination. Imagination is the faculty of the mind that images and forms. It is the power to shape and form thought. With our imaginations, we lay hold of ideas and clothe them with substance. Isn't that a cool description? Because we just think of our imagination so many times as being something creative. Oh, and I've heard people say, I'm not creative. I can't paint, I can't sew, I can't do these things, whatever I can't draw, I can't write poems, none of these things. They'll say that, but that's not true. And imagination is more than just being creative. Imagination is the idea that you can see beyond what is right here, and to shape and form your thoughts to manifest in your life, that formative power that God gives us. So it's more than just being creative or finding those outlets. Although all of that is good, it is good for you, that's for sure. But every day we could get a plethora of ideas from God, and it's up to us to bring them forth through that power of imagination. Now, we all know that the best things are created from divine ideas. There's a lot of good things that happen without divine idea. Well, I don't say without divine ideas, because everything is a divine idea, but without us knowing that it was a divine idea. We could get an idea for something and then think, oh yeah, this is great, and go along, and then all of a sudden go, how did I even get that idea? How did that even come about? And we try to put it on something instead of thinking, wow, that was a divine idea. Thank you, God, for giving me that divine idea, because this is really powerful and cool. And if we would stop and pause in the minute of receiving that divine idea, I think that the path that we would follow from that divine idea would manifest a lot quicker and a lot better and bring forth a higher good for everybody. But we have to stop and think about it. Because we have programmed ourselves not to just be in that flow of knowing, like, whoa, divine idea, okay, God's telling me to go this direction, and I'm going to follow it, and I'm going to be grateful. It's not like our brains are thinking that as it happens. And yet, if it did, we'd start doing that with everything that comes forth. Oh, wow, if I do this first, then this will happen. And I know that God is bringing that forth. And if that doesn't happen, it's okay, because God's going to bring me something else. And we don't have to go that worry and stress and all doubt and fear and lack and limitation. No, because we know that the path is always open when we follow that path. Does it make sense? Yes?
Yes.
Well, so it comes down to what we picture in our minds and what we are doing. And so I watched this reel the other day, and this woman I keep moving because of that. I got a shiner right here. Sorry if you can't see me because of the phone. But anyway, I was watching this reel the other day, and this woman was 102 years old. And this guy was interviewing, and no, she looked like she was probably 75 or maybe 80. But still, she said, he was saying, well, how have you lived this long, and you're still taking care of yourself, you're still cooking all your meals, I heard you just, they don't let you drive anymore, but I know that you get around and go different places, and she has this favorite pizza place, and the guy was going to take her for coffee, and she said, no, I want to go to the pizza place, and so he took her to the pizza place, but she said it all had to do with attitude and gratitude. And she was saying, I have this attitude that I decided at one point, someone that I met said, choose an age that you want to be and stay that age. And I thought, oh, that's fun. And she said, so I decided I was going to stay like 55, you know. So she said, in my mind, I'm 55. So I don't think about being 102 until I start thinking about all these things that have happened. But she said, it's all about the attitude I have about this. And then she says, of course, I have gratitude that I still can do all these things and that I'm not just sitting at home doing nothing. So the interviewer then, you know, has a couple people that, you know, you don't see their faces, you just hear them. And this one gal says, oh, you just make my day. I love to see your reels, and I love that he's, you know, he met her in an airport and they started talking, so he's got all these different reels. And he goes, she said, I love to watch it. You're just so great. And especially in this world today where everything is just terrible and everything's running amok, it's so nice to hear somebody with a happy voice. And I thought to myself, she missed the whole point, didn't she? You can't sit there and tell somebody you love them and think they're great and it uplifts your day, and then turn around and say you live in a miserable world where everything's going to heck, and Warren would say hell, but anyway, you can't do that. So it is about having the right attitude and gratitude for where you are in your life and what you're expressing from. And it's going to take the power of imagination sometimes. It is. Because sometimes we have to just tell ourselves, hey, this is not what's real, capital R, real, meaning aligned with God. This is just something that is happening right here, right now, but I don't have to be in it. You know what I mean? You can rise above it. And this is more from Fillmore. In the communication of God with man, the imaging power of the mind plays an important part. It receives the divine ideas and reflects their characters to the consciousness. This is what I'm talking about. We have to have that idea that we are no longer less than or that we have anything to worry about. And this is where the power of imagination comes in, because it's that imaging power. And we all, a simple exercise you can do for yourself that will really help you see how great you really are and how much good there really is to go home. And I invite you to do this. I invite you to do this. Go home and look in a mirror and look at yourself. And if you see something that you don't like, step away from the mirror and affirm this. Let's say it together. I am a child of God, and as such, I am a divine expression of perfection here on this earth. And then go back and look in the mirror. And I guarantee you, you will see something new and better. Because, you know, we convince ourselves with our power of our imagination. Yeah, Kat, good job taking a photo of it. We convince ourselves with the power of imagination that, you know, there's things we don't like. Oh, look at that wrinkle. Look at that spot. Look at, oh my gosh, you know, whatever it is. And we don't have to do that. We can just affirm the good that is there. And then our power of imagination is activated. And I say activated like this because I'm going to explain that to you. Because imagination is the 12th power for June. And it is located in between your eyes in the front of the brain. So people call it third eye. Everybody touch your third eye, your power of imagination. But did you know this? On this side of your brain is understanding, and on this side is will. And faith happens to be in the middle of your head and brain, smack in the middle, behind imagination. So if you are lacking in imagination and not seeing the truth of God in your life, then you need to think about these other places and decide, am I lacking faith? An easy thing to think about is, am I fearful of something? Am I doubting something? Because the opposite of faith is fear or doubt. So you need to work on faith in order to have a better picture of an alignment with imagination. Or maybe you are pushing your will on everybody else or yourself or whatever and not following God's will. That's something to work on. The power, well, the will's over here. The power of understanding is another thing, because we have to understand from the aspect of God, not the aspect of ourselves. So it's all kind of a balance act that happens together. And if we can keep those balanced, then guess what? We will be following that path of imagination, and those divine ideas will be flowing to us freely and easy and effortlessly. Okay, so there it is. It is perceptive faculty which determines size, weight, form, and color. It sits between understanding will and the front of faith. When we are working together, our thoughts produce directly from God, and we will know it, claim it, and manifest it in our life. If we are out of balance, the perception changes. If we are pulled away from one of these areas, it will skew our perception. And we don't want to be skewed, do we? No, we don't. So we have to follow that path, that true path of God coming forth. However, as we develop in understanding and allow the will of God, because we know our will and God's will are one, but yet we try to make it all about us sometimes. But when we develop in understanding and allow the will of God to guide us, our faith is strengthened and our powers are reinforced. Our imagination then activates, and we now have the best Wi-Fi, I say, reception beyond anything we have experienced, because we will be receiving smack straight from God. Don't you want that?
Yes.
Yeah. Always be able to be in that place of whatever we're doing. We know that God is here with us, bringing it forth. It's huge. It's that alignment of truth that we search for in our lives. In that moment, we have built a force field around us, blocking out anything less than the divine message we are to receive and live by. When we can allow those powers to come together and be that powerhouse that is there for us, it is like having a bubble around you. You know, when somebody comes up and says something negative, or somebody's got an attitude, or, you know, this saying, rub you the wrong way, no longer will that happen, because you are coming from this force within you that builds a force around you that keeps you from being affected. And then you can go out into the world and feel like you are living from truth, that you are allowing the capital T truth of God to guide you and steer you in the right direction. And that is huge. You know, it is huge to be in that place. At the same time, we keep out error thoughts, words, and actions. We begin to create from within. The power pulling from our souls will be so tangible that we will soon realize that God's got this, and so do we. The stress is no longer there. The stress is gone. I mean, we find ourselves in this place where everything seems calm and peaceful, and we don't have to worry. No matter what shows up, we'll just go, oh, I know God's got this, and I believe it, and I can see it, and I can bring it forth. And it's such a inner peace that comes that is so powerful. It will be a mutual understanding that our will and God's will are one, working together to bring us higher and higher. And in that revelation is the energy to know what we are experiencing is not only for us, but for everyone. We all in this room, and I truly believe this, if all of us in this room even had, 1 minute of us all living from that idea of the powers within us and being aligned with divine mind, with God, I think, because, it's all that critical mass and that shift, but we would shift the energy out into the universe, and it could make a huge difference. And Fillmore truly believed this, and I believe it too. It might only take 2 of us. Who knows? I don't know. But in that nanosecond of all of us aligning and feeling like, we are activating these powers in our lives, we are doing it for others too, because we're all one, right? We're all in here together. Yeah. So, and all those fears and worries and lack and limitation will no longer have any form, because we've released them and we've let them go. And we will no longer have those riots, I call them, in our minds, because guess what? They're going to be gone. We're going to know that we are receiving these messages from God, that they are from, the place where we need to be, the alignment that we have. And if we're having any kind of disconnect, we can stop and, say a prayer. We can stop and do something else. And the right thoughts, words, and actions will come forth. They truly will, because we're aligned. And if we feel like our error thoughts are popping up, we can always look at these thoughts and say, well, was this just my imagination? Yeah. Or we can align with God and proclaim the lyrics of the song that say,